Hello. Good afternoon, at least on the East Coast. Um, it is a lovely day today, bright and sunny, and I wanted to talk to you about a new and exciting sociological article. It's really great. It's another article from Sociological Theory. It's by Seth Abrutyn. I did not look up how to say his name, full disclosure, but one of the professors I had at the University of Chicago co-authored a lot of stuff with him, and so it's really interesting because he's going to be talking about pleasure, but so much of his prior work is about suicidality and this whole field that studies the circumstances around collective suicide, individual suicide. That's not what we're talking about today. But this article, good to see you all, Dawn and Mark. So this article is it's called Theorizing Affective Motivation, Motives, Seeking, and the Mundanity of Pleasure. This is in the newest sociological theory. Okay, but before we get to that, I wanted to talk about the previous article, the article by Mann and Winchester. And I just have a couple notes here. So I noticed kind of two lines of thinking as people were talking about that. People were fed up with what I might call, and I hope this isn't reductive, an aesthetic. Perhaps this is a particularly harmful aesthetic, and it refers back to that word tone that I heard PVK using in homeroom this morning, where he was engaging Luke and MJ. So that article that we read last week was kind of playing into and farthering the political divide. It came across as maybe elitist, maybe in poor taste. And then the second sort of reflection from last week, that this isn't a new thing that we were observing last week. The authors drew on a lot of prior research to build their theory, which they did do. A lot of people, Afriel, it's called 500 followers. It's what we need. I don't know. It told us something that we already knew about people's relationship with religion. Religion is everywhere. That article last week, the Mann and Winchester, revealed a particularly strong Durkheimian undercurrent in this little corner of the internet and the Peterson sphere. Sacred symbols are everywhere. And whatever your religious identity, your religion is wherever you're giving time over to those sacred things, whatever they are. So to sum up some of what I heard people say, religion is whenever you're giving something that outsized importance. It turns out that for a lot of people that thing is Fox News, but religion doesn't know a particular political party, and it's kind of gross whenever people on the left act like they don't have religion too. Okay, so that was last week. This week, theorizing affective motivation, motive seeking, and the mundanity of pleasure. Okay, you can join me in reading this if you want. This is an open access article, as best I can tell, which means if you type into your Google Scholar, Seth Abrutyn, Abrutyn, theorizing affective motivation, motives, seeking, and the mundanity of pleasure, you too can read this article. Okay, and then I wanted to frame this a little bit. Theory pieces in particular are theorists speaking to other theorists about obscure pieces of sociology. There's technical jargon and an assumption of serious background knowledge, which kind of sucks because I like to kind of write things for a general audience. That's not really how you get published. But the point is that this is an ongoing conversation. So we're stepping into a conversation here. And the people who wrote this, the other people who are talking about this, they might not see us. And so we kind of have to do a little bit of extra work, I think, to kind of understand what's happening and to apply it to us. So I'm going to take their argument, Seth's argument, and I'm going to apply it to my research case, which is how do people leave their religion? How do people change religious identity? A lot of the people I've talked to have left religion. They found a new religion. Their religious identity is changing. And I want to kind of uncover a little bit more about how we can think about how and why they do that. And I think Seth's article is really going to help me out. Okay, so Seth is at British Columbia. A lot of his work deals with suicide, suicidality, suicides in community. I talked about my U Chicago professor. She's really committed. So this is one of his co-authors, not on this paper, but generally. Really committed to public sociology, to talking to communities about why suicide happens. That's just my personal connection to somebody who knows this guy, Seth. But it's interesting to me that he's focused on motivations, and then later in this piece, pleasure. But he's got a different background. So it's just really interesting how one person could kind of work on both sides of this coin. So my research question, how do people move into and out of their religious identities? We know a lot about why this happens. Lots of people have suggested theories of motivation. One of the most common theories is that we act first and we think about it later, right? Motivation is sort of an afterthought. First, we have stimulus, then we have action, then we have justification, all the way at the end of this. So it's like when you talk to like a child and you ask them, why did you do that? And they just sort of start making up a story, So this article gets way deeper. It sort of changes those assumptions we have. So it's giving us a new tool, motivation theory, by which we can kind of solve this problem. So I'm going to start by reading you all the abstract, and I hope you can help me think with this. Okay, so here we go. This is Seth's abstract. A central issue in sociology concerns motivation. Generally, sociologists have followed Mill's lead, that's C. Wright Mill's lead, in emphasizing motive talk or post hoc explanations over the springs of action themselves. Drawing from the interdisciplinary science of motivation, this article argues that we can tease motives apart from motive talk, which we'll talk more about. We can tease motives apart from motive talk by incorporating the affective disposition to seek into a theory of motivation. So he's giving us this new tool, this affective disposition to seek, which he's going to incorporate into his theory of motivation. Seeking involves 3 dissociable phases. So this is a whole theory we're going to dig into. He's got a cool graphic. We're going to dig into the theory, but this is just the introduction. So seeking involves 3 dissociable phases: wanting, liking, and learning, each of which is intrinsically pleasurable. So we can think about TLC in relation to this as we're going. But this suggests 3 things. First, mundane activities related to anticipation or learning are affective in nature. So we're going to get into that word affective too. We'll think of it broadly as emotion or emotive, but the authors really want to distinguish affect from emotion. So there's going to be 3 things. Mundane activities are related to anticipation or learning. They're affective in nature. 2, not only does each phase of seeking involve different motives, but also any given phase contains a sequence of activities. Sequences of activities likely indicating mixed motives. That's a big deal and a big contribution, because we if you're doing this after the fact, you kind of reduce it to one motive. He's saying, no, it's more complex than that. There might be mixed motives. Okay, the third thing, people commit to routines and roles, not because of their habits or automatic cognition, but because of affective urgency and expectation they feel in their bodies. This is huge right now. Implications, it has all sorts of things, trauma and whatever associated with this feeling it in our bodies. It's not just about cognition. It's not just about our habits. It's about affective urgency and expectation we feel in our bodies. Implications for the sociological literature on pleasure and for sociology of motivation are discussed. Okay, so we're going to get into Seth's theory here. Okay, I'm going to skip parts of the introduction. I'm just going to tell you that a lot of the work in sociology depends on this binary idea about what's happening. Action, right? Action, the things we do, is either habitual, it's related to wherever we find ourselves. We don't think about it. It's like driving a car, right? And when you're driving, like from home to work. You're just doing the same thing. It's part of habit. It's your sort of type 1 automatic thinking. You're doing what you're doing because of your class and taste and whatever, and you fit in this square box. Okay. Or alternatively, as you're driving to work, your action becomes deliberate because, oh, maybe there's an obstacle in your path and you have to figure out how to get around it. Or maybe you have a detour sign up where you usually go because maybe there's construction. And so you have to do some conscious, cognitive, type 2, deliberate kind of thinking. But a lot of it falls into this, what Seth is calling a binary approach. Okay, so he's saying the problems with this binary approach are clear. It presents actors as largely reactive, reducing their pleasures, desires, and passions to systematic forces beyond their reach. Few motives or motivations are their own. Moreover, although the binary acknowledges the role of emotions, as in Faizy's important 2009 evocation of Haidt's, Jonathan Haidt, emphasis on intuition, action continues to be identified solely with the process of thinking, anticipating, planning, deliberating, and calculating. So part of his argument is that it leaves out this affective piece. It leaves out this emotions. Okay, well, we have a prediction here from Jacob Federici, who has not read the article yet. Okay, so let's continue ahead here. We'll see if Jacob's prediction is correct. Okay, so then I wanted to skip down and then say, okay, so he sees this problem in sociology, and now here's the solution. This article stakes out an affectivist position that begins with Hume's argument. Reason is and ought only to be the slave of the passions and can never pretend to any other office than to serve and obey them. Drawing from a diverse body of research, I refer to as motivation science. So here's that motivation science piece. I find affectivism can be incorporated into sociology in many ways. Okay, but for the sake of brevity and coherence, he's going to focus here on the one system devoted to motivation and reward called the seeking system. Okay, this is going to be big for his paper here. The seeking system. Okay, I see a lot of questions here in the chat here. We'll get to these in a minute after we read the article. Okay, this science shows that seeking or wanting, which is the folk term for this anticipatory processes. So here he's kind of showing us how he's contributing to this question of motivation. Is driven by, and this is important, a dopaminergic subcortical system that is continuously active. So it's depending on that dopamine system, meaning mammals are motivated to seek nearly all the time. And then he goes on to kind of explain what this means. Because dopamine is a pleasurable chemical, the dispositions, activities, and learning tied to seeking can be placed at the root of affective motivation. In other words, we seek because it feels good, and that feeling, often in the form of precognitive embodied sensations, not only becomes a signal that our body and mind's relationship to the environment, but also simultaneously acts as a form of consciousness. And there's a lot, I'm not reading the citations here. I just want to be clear. There's a lot, this is very well cited. So he's not just saying his own ideas, he's summing up the literature. So we seek because it feels good, and that feeling, often in the form of precognitive embodied sensations, not only becomes a signal about our body and mind's relationship to the environment, but also simultaneously acts as a form of consciousness. Ultimately, seeking is the source of intrinsic motivation. Most surprising, then, is the fact that affective action is not what sociologists usually think it is. And he's referring to Weber here. Rather, the activities that cause dopamine to increase or to pulse offer a set of intrinsic motives for a panoply of activities that happen to overlap with all sorts of phenomena studied by those unsatisfied with the binary model. Okay, so what's important here is dopamine is an embodied thing. It's not related to those previous models. It's a new thing that we can talk about as being a part of motivation. Um, so that pleasurable. So he does talk about sex work here. There's a lot of good stuff. If you pick up the article, you can really dig into. We're skipping to his theory. Okay, so in what follows, I sketch an affective theory of emotion. First, I discuss action, motivation, and motive talk. The principal innovation in this section, beyond establishing clarity, is in the importance of twin insights from motivation science. That's his contribution here. He's throwing motivation science into sociology. He's saying, here's the insights: that action or activities are not unitary, but consist of sequences of intermediate activities, and that this suggests mixed motives, which he says has previously been a point that Goffman gave us. Okay, so then his second step involves identifying the motivational dispositions and activities related to seeking. This comes in the service of demonstrating what effective action and motivation are, and the fact that sociologists already study many of these things without thinking about them. Okay, so as parts of motivation. But this seeking, the fact that he uses seeking, I think is really important to this little corner of the internet. And I want to hear what y'all think about this, because seeking is something that kind of comes up. We have this movement of evangelicals and new church people, emergent church people, talking about seeking. It's very important spiritually, and he gets on in our spiritual and religious identities and all that. He gets on here talking about just a little piece of that. I just think it's really important. So that's another reason that this article, I think, is very interesting for us to talk about. Okay, so just to kind of cap this off, he's going to talk about the problems with how we think about motive in sociology right now. He's going to talk about how our methodological way of studying this is to basically ask people after the fact, and he's calling that motive talk. And we know from neuroscience research and stuff that, well, actually, people might not really have the same answer after the fact as they would have in the moment. If you could really zero in on that, they might not have that awareness of what the motive is for their action. So, and then we have this problem with monomotives. It's pretty clear that there's sometimes many motives for why we do things, but the literature right now sort of favors these monomotives, and that's not supported empirically. And then I think maybe the most important thing is that this bracketing of emotions in favor of cognition and the tendency to emphasize monomotives has led to this institutionalization in the literature of action, this binary, which we've already talked about. Okay, so he's correcting this binary problem, that action is either habitual or deliberate. We've already talked about this. Okay. So now he's telling us about motive being affective. It's embodied, which is really cool. And there's a lot of good papers on this that he's going to tell us about. I might have skipped too far down. Okay. But this is coming from motivation science, which he's using to correct this problem. Motive is embodied. Motivation is part of the brain, evolved before cognition and language. So we can point to that part of the brain and say, actually, it's often precognitive. And then this third part is affective consciousness, coordinates commands, and sometimes controls decision making. And this is a place in the article where pain and trauma come up. And he specifically says motivation science offers a set of physiologically and chemically dissociable subcortical systems, each designated the affective disposition or action tendencies common to affective action. So we get to this point in the body where we can see physically in the body how some things about how we think maybe motivation happens, and it's affective. So I really want to scroll down to this part to talking about the seeking system. That's really important. So he's talking about dopamine. Dopamine neurons on the front end signal incentive salience, provide embodied signals anticipating reward. He's got this really great model for how this seeking happens, from wanting to liking to learning. and your dopamine or your pleasure experience is going to increase and then decrease just a little bit, but it's going to be a pleasurable experience over time based on your expectations. And he goes on and he talks about this really cool thing where it's like he talks about the journey being better than the destination. He talks about anticipating the reward being like a richer, more pleasurable experience than just the reward itself. And so he's connecting this dopamine to motivation, which is obviously like it kind of makes like a lot of sense after the fact that like we would want to do things because they're pleasurable and that would influence our desire to do them and therefore our motivation to do them. But that's a little bit different from this idea that our motivation just comes from our habits. And it's very different. Or our deliberation, it's actually happening at a level that we can see. He thinks in the brain, and I think he's got good evidence with this, some of the neuro studies he cites and things like that. And he's just talking about opiates and stuff. Okay, sorry. I will definitely try to open this up soon so that we can talk about this if we want to. So he's talking about the anticipation drive that prepares us. Preparation feels good to people. It feels good to be prepared. The dopamine response grows as we sit and settle into, say a menu at a restaurant. So he says that this might feel like this example he gives of sitting at a restaurant. It might feel asociological because it's hedonic. Why should we expect this affective response to be limited to his hedonic pleasures, such as eating and sex and drugs? Dopamine flows in an array of situations related to aesthetics, embodiment. This is the part where we get to religion. Aesthetics, embodiment, creativity, physical activity, meditation. And I think there's a case even for things like fasting and things like, oh, that's a pleasurable experience for people. The multiphasic mixed motives nature of activity suggests things that seem to have clear conventional sociological explanations, such as the girl hunt. There's this great ethnography he's citing. Big wave surfing they have mixed motives. Okay. There was a part that I really wanted to read. The journey matters as much as the destination. We talked about that. Okay, yeah. So here we go. For clarity, I want to define as the pursuit, deliberate or otherwise, of specific objects, whether hedonic or aesthetic. So he's giving us two categories of things we want for pleasure, believed to trigger opioid responses. People desire the body release of sexual orgasm, the high of cocaine, and the savory flavor of food. But they also desire states of experience related to transcendence, liminality, and being and ritual. Ritual, artistic, or creative experiences. So this gives us a really interesting way to think, not just about seeking for things like, getting high or eating a good meal, but seeking about spiritual experiences, transcendence, liminality, ritual. He specifically says all of these things. And so as we're bringing it back to this little corner of the internet, as we're thinking about dopamine, religion, etc., the motivations for how and why people change their religion, the seeking piece that Seth contributes, I think, is really important. Okay. We'll keep this moving, and I'm going to drop the link soon. So he says motivation science does not explicitly identify specific motivations, but studies emphasize activities that are rewarding. Let me just sort of see if there's anything else I really wanted to say. Okay, here we go. Perhaps my most crucial take-home point is that sometimes people are motivated to act for the sake of that action feeling good. Sometimes we go to a different church because it feels better. They've got better coffee. The music's better. They're not always driven by needs related to moral meaning or in dutiful fulfillment of their habitats or reference groups' expectations. Doing crossword puzzles, taking long walks, writing blogs or poetry, and consuming news are solitary pleasures. And let's add to this praying, meditating, listening to a YouTube video are solitary pleasures that are nonetheless sociologically interesting because they are affectively motivated. Um, if we accept this premise, it's possible to believe that many activities that fall outside the neat binary of habitual deliberate action are activities that feel good outcomes. Okay, so he's going to keep going on and on. We've read a lot of this. He's got a lot of great contributions that he outlines. This is another very well written sociological theory piece. Good point, Afriel. Good point. Okay, well, if anybody's interested, we can discuss the implications. A lot of them are related to the sociological literature, so that might be boring. Okay, if anyone's gonna have any thoughts, I'm just gonna go ahead and drop the link. Please, I invite you to share if you've got thoughts or comments about this, and then we'll kind of work through this. Okay, so it's not letting me scroll. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. So Afriel asks, how does awareness of the story influence its telling? Does that recursive reflective nature guide the story towards truth? That's an interesting question. Kind of about motivation, which we can talk about, but I also want to hear from Jacob Federici, who has joined us. Hi, Jacob.
Hi. I wore this hat not just for you. It was a birthday present I got from somebody, so that's why I'm wearing it. But
Okay.
I thought you would appreciate it.
Okay, what am I supposed to appreciate about it? Miss me, Trump 2024.
And
I don't
that's
get
the
it.
picture of him being missed.
Oh, I see. I see. That's really something, Jacob. That's really that's an assassination attempt on a hat right there.
Apparently, it was a birthday present.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Although it was a birthday present from someone who I keep on telling him, like, I'm not actually a Trump fan, but whatever.
Okay, but I think I've seen you wear like a red Trump hat before.
Oh, yeah. I do it to trigger people.
Oh, okay. So you're triggering people on purpose. That's actually really related to the article because our
Yeah, I
motivation.
actually have a shirt, have a red hat that says "Made You Look" on it.
Oh,
I wear that more than the actual MAGA hat.
so you get this pleasure out of triggering people.
So okay, so I'm walking my dog at the farmers market of the People's Republic of Santa Monica.
Great.
This is, I mean, if the Blue Cathedral had a Garden of Eden, it would be the farmers market at the People's Republic of Santa Monica.
Sometimes you find something cool at a farmer's market. Sometimes you just find overpriced soap, but sometimes you find something cool.
So I was wearing that hat that said "Made You Look."
You're cruel, Jacob. You're just cruel.
And I'm walking by one of the stalls, and one of the farmers wearing a black Texas, hats, 10-gallon hat, and like boots and stuff, was talking really loud on his phone. And he says, really mad too, when I see one of those effing, he didn't say effing, MAGA hats, I just want to shoot first and ask questions later. I don't know if he even noticed that it said "Made You Look" on it.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was triggered.
He was very triggered. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of sad.
Yeah. Okay, but circle back here. What are your thoughts on the article?
My thoughts on the article was I guessed that Judith Butler is cited as in this article. So,
Okay, I don't,
so
I
is
don't
she?
think it
Is
was.
she? Is she? This was an absolute guess.
Okay, he doesn't. He's dealing with emotions and motivation and
I'm
stuff.
asking you for the
I'm looking. I'm
citations.
reading this. I'm reading the citations. Okay, no. We've got Buckley, Ralph, Burke, Peter Burke a lot because he's an identity and emotion scholar. There is no
There's no
Judith
Judith Butler.
Butler. Straight from Gordon Brett to Ralph Buckley. No, and then Peter Burke.
Can I ask you to just do a control F real quick?
Colin Campbell. I'm okay. I will control F. I will Butler and the control F here just for you. Nope, nothing's coming
No?
up because
Okay.
he's not talking about gender. He's not
admit,
talking about
I admit
performance.
I was wrong.
It's okay. I mean, it's a good guess.
I
Sometimes you'll find it.
I did try to find out what motivation science is.
Okay.
And
Okay. And he defines it
apparently
too. Yeah.
there's a motivation science journal, and
wow.
it says journal scope statement. Motivation Science is a multidisciplinary journal that publishes significant contributions to the study of motivation broadly conceived, yada, yada, yada. Equity, diversity, and inclusion. Motivation Science supports equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I'm just glad they have a nihil obstat. That's really important.
Okay. Well, this guy's contribution is taking motivation theory, which he defines kind of within his sort of lane, and putting that into this piece about sociology. What's so funny, Jacob?
I believe in science.
Do you?
I do.
What does that mean to you?
It means Karl Popper was right that if it's not falsifiable, it is not a belief that we can presume to be scientific.
No, I mean, he's not really claiming this is falsifiable. He's saying this is advancing a sociological theory. So this might not fit your definition of science.
So part of the reason I decided to go into psychology is because I think psychology is really, really important.
Yeah.
And I think the scientific method is our best way of making sure that that things are actually work and that we're helping the people we're trying to help. And I think that mental health, very much like physical health, is a scientific endeavor.
Sure.
And I would like to see the death penalty for people who have taken absolute and clear negligent steps to murder people.
So the death penalty. See, I don't. Why? Why does that? Like, why is that the first thing that comes? Like, I just don't get it.
Because, and that's why I pointed to Intellectuals in Society. Thomas Sowell, I think, is very correct when he says, when there is no skin in the game, there is no cost to the suffering you caused in the world, people will then just haphazardly hurt other people.
Okay, let me throw this at you. Isn't there like a whole hell of a lot of cost between, say, the death penalty and losing your allowance? I mean, like,
yes.
Why go the most? I mean, psychological research, you're a psychologist, will tell us that the least effective penalty or punishment is really good for increasing your intrinsic motivation. So why are you jumping to the most extreme?
Because of the Overton window and negotiating and what's the name of that effect? That
I'm not familiar with any of these things.
The anchoring effect.
It's not coming to me. And what is this overtone? What did you say? Overtone window? Over what?
Overton window.
Overton window. So this is new. I haven't read a lot of time. I mean, I have Thomas Sowell's book on my shelf up there.
I'm not sure he speaks about the Overton window.
Range of subjects and arguments politically acceptable to the mainstream at any given time. It can shrink or there's a psych book on trauma that says the same window argument.
And the anchoring effect is really so the anchoring effect is, let's say, so for example,
Mm-hmm.
I often like to ask people what percentage of the world's population they think is Jewish.
Sure. What is it, like 5% or something?
It's about a fifth of 1%.
Wow. See, I got that wrong, and I studied this.
And it's by orders of magnitude. Most people, I often get 10-20%. Yeah.
Is it like 2% in the U.S., 3% maybe?
In the US, yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously you can't just extend that everywhere like I did in my brain. Okay. All right. Half of 1%.
No, it's quarter to a fifth of 1%. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So very, very small.
Yeah. But when you ask people to guess at something and they really, really have no idea, affective is why. When I heard affective, I thought he was talking about Judith Butler, because she is the unholy godmother of all things affective.
Okay, let's not hate. Let's not make every stream into a hating on Judith Butler situation, Jacob.
But it's so much fun.
Get over yourself. This is my stream.
Okay, back to the anchoring effect.
What?
The anchoring effect. So when people get, so even if they take a wild guess, that first guess, the first impression they have, will have a real effect. So if I say to you, so what do you think the world Jewish population is? 10%, 20%, 90%, right? Like, obviously 90% is wrong, right? I could have said 50%, 90%, right? Mm-hmm. I say 50%, 90%. Obviously, both of those are wrong, but you're going to peg what you say based on that, right? So if I start with, I don't know, 90%, 50%, then you're much more likely to say 10%, 20% than if I say 5%, 1%.
Yes. Right? Okay. It's been a long time since I've had a psych class, but I know what you're talking about. Okay, so that's why you go with the harshest punishment sort of thing, because you think that most people sort of have it in their mind to be a lot less, and so you say the most extreme.
So most people believe. So I mean, the negotiating position, and this is really what Trump does a lot of times. The negotiating position. If I were to start off saying, "Hey, how about we have some consequence, like a person could lose their job," right? Then that's my opening bid, and we're never going to end up negotiating to how about that person loses their job. But if I start with capital punishment, you can be like, hey, why don't we start with, like, maybe they get censured? You know, it's an opening bid.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not saying what you mean. You're saying your opening bid to get what you actually want.
I am trying to communicate my point to the person I am speaking with. I use language to communicate. I don't use I try not to use language to express myself, because that is solipsistic and narcissistic, I believe. You should speak to the people you are speaking with. You should not speak to hear yourself speak.
Okay. And I got you there. I got you. Let's I want to circle back. I want to talk about the article. Do you buy my premise, my sort of I mean, I know you never buy it. But I know the answer is going to be no. But let's talk about, do you think that our affects, especially when there's dopamine involved, does could it go so far as making us leave our religion? Do you think it sort of starts the stem of action? Do you think some of the things that
I don't believe or disbelieve it, because I do believe in science. I would love to be able to look at peer-reviewed literature
Mm,
and trust that it has been peer-reviewed, and that the person who has read it has actually asked all of the basic questions that I would ask, which is,
mm.
oh, so you're talking about dopamine. Um, I hope one of the reviewers is a neuroscientist. I don't know. I
He
don't know
cites a
who.
lot of neurosociology literature. Um,
Neurosociology, yeah.
yeah, I'd never read any of that actually, and I
Um,
was kind of surprised it was a term, but there are some books on it that I can't get access to.
oh, there's all kinds of sociology. Um,
Uh,
the be, because that's how you take a science and destroy it, is you make it sociological. um
well, he's doing sort of something opposite. He's taking sociology and he's adding neuroscience to it, which is
i i I am highly skeptical, to the point of being cynical,
hmm.
that is in fact what is happening in any way, shape, or form.
Well, can I
I
pick your brain a little bit? Like, can I pick your brain about your experiences? Because, like, okay, so you've had all these different religious experiences. I hope it's okay if I talk about this.
Sure.
But like in our four hour or however many hour conversation it was, you've had all these different experiences. You've been to some really cool places,
Mhm.
and you've had lots of changes. And so I'm kind of wondering, well, do you think motivation was a part of it? Like, do you think like what motive? Like, why did you have those changes? Like,
So I'm very skeptical of my own phenomenology,
sure,
right? Because I my family has a history of mental health issues,
yeah.
um, and I have a history of mental health issues, and I'm generally skeptical of human beings describing their own experience. This is one of the reasons why I so much believe in empiricism.
Well, that's part of this article too, is that it's saying like, oh, I guess we have to. So even this question is kind of flawed because it's like, oh, we have to be skeptical of our own telling of our own experiences. So you and the author agree on that part. Like talking about our own experiences doesn't get us closer to necessarily understanding motivation. So it is kind of backwards. Like, how do we get there? You and the author both asked that actually.
Well, I mean, it seems I see this just so much that, um, to the degree that people pay lip service to, actual science, I don't actually see real science being, certainly in the psychological literature. I have so much mistrust and distrust.
Hmm.
Um, I presume that if something has been peer reviewed, it must be flawed. Um, that it would not have been published if it were not flawed.
Huh. Well, okay, so like, and I wonder, like, okay, so like, I agree with you. There's all sorts of mistakes in literature. There's all sorts of, changes that people
But
like.
there are systematic biases at play.
I mean, there are like we talked about. I mean, like, do you mean like what we talked about last week, where it's like, oh, there's definitely like sometimes there's clearly a liberal bias, right?
Yeah, it's so, and I think it does go back to what we were talking about last week very much, in that, yes, there is a religious frame. I would say religion is in many ways kind of the operating system of a human being.
Yeah.
And there are certainly people who are not aware that they have a religious frame. Mark Lefebvre cutely coined the term, um, if you believe you do not have religion, one has been provided to you without your knowledge and consent.
Yeah, I saw somebody wrote that. Somebody's quoting Mark, I guess. Yeah.
And it's very, very true. I mean, we're using the Jungian sense of the word religion, which is how both Vervaeke and Peterson use it. And I
Yeah.
mean, the University of Toronto, it's funny, University of Toronto is becoming like a refuge for people, for academics from the United States. You may have
Oh.
noticed.
I haven't been following that too much, but there's a lot of great scholars at U Toronto.
There's a lot who are moving. 3 professors of philosophy moved from Yale to University of Toronto. University of Toronto is I mean, I was not as aware of it, but the University of Toronto Department of Psychology is actually where cognitive psychology started.
You got a lot of recognition and stuff coming out of there, like
Right,
really good stuff.
Actually scientific stuff, which is part of the reason I very much like Peterson. And I mean, when you look at Peterson's peer-reviewed publications before he became a political actor, he was actually a very widely cited psychologist. But so Vervaeke and Peterson both talk in a similar manner about religion in the Jungian sense as that which orients us in the world and our priorities. And
yeah. Well, and then also, oh, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I'm seeing in TLC too this very Durkheimian idea, not just the Jungian, but this Durkheimian sort of idea that, you know, religion is wherever we see those sacred symbols.
Yeah.
And in whatever community we're in. So I see both of those happening.
Yeah. No, I mean, the fact is, I have to say, part of what I love about what I would call the Jordan Peterson sphere, you can call TLC if you like, is that it very much is where science is actually engaging with reality, where all of the people who have been exiled from academia and proper thinking society, we are a leper colony of sorts for the people who have been exiled from the halls of academia.
I see that. And I see a lot of people on the right who just kind of get pissed off and fed up with maybe some of the strictures of academia, who are just kind of saying.
So this was another thing with last week's article, which, I mean, I could attack it on so many levels, but one of it is this presumption that of left and right. There are ways you can go ahead and define left and right. I think most of those ways aren't very applicable these days at all. And the people in the Jordan Peterson sphere are not temperamentally conservative people at all. I mean, and I think anybody who calls Donald Trump a conservative is just being silly.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so like we have all this happening and our categories are changing so rapidly. So like I kind of like, I mean, like I see what you're saying. It's really hard to have a way of talking about this because we see red and blue. And somebody I think said this on Discord. It's like
red and blue is much better than left and right.
I mean, yeah. I mean, and conceptually, I kind of agree with that. But okay, don't let this break into a political stream, Jacob. Let's talk about empiricism because I think this is important.
Is the thing. Like religion, I was very. I mean, I've described my motivations many times, but I started my bachelor's degree was one of my majors was political science. Yeah. And so I very much wanted to practically engage with politics. And I eventually came to the conclusion that politics rides on a substream of religion, and part of the problem, I would say. Have you ever heard? And it's funny, I saw it in a paper that a famous physicist wrote, but a similar type of thing, except he didn't go around. Have you ever heard biology is chemistry, chemistry is physics, physics is math, math is philosophy, philosophy is psychology, psychology is neurology, neurology is biology, and all the way around it goes?
Yeah, I think I've seen this before.
So I believe that theology is the queen of the sciences in that it makes science, that entire wheel describes spokes of theology.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's just all the nails. It's hilarious.
We apparently have a lot of needs. So, and I think that's, if you watched Peterson speaking with Dawkins, especially the latest
Okay,
thing.
talk about a stream that's going to make your blood pressure go up, Jacob. Peterson and Dawkins.
Oh, I love that stream.
What is the two of them? You just see the high blood pressure in their faces, and then when they get together.
No, actually, so there was a Cosmic Skeptic. I forget what his name is. Was moderating that, and he's actually engaged.
I think I might have seen that stream actually. Now that we're talking about it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's actually engaged. I thought that was an important stream. That was an important contribution that actually speaks to what we are talking about now, because the way I frame it, I say I don't believe in a God I can see through a microscope or a telescope. I believe in a God whose existence is necessary for me to look through a microscope or a telescope.
See, this is interesting to me when we talk about Peterson and God, because it's hard to. He won't commit to a particular camp, will he? So how do we?
Well, he insists on the classical theist definition. I think what's his name, Vervaeke, more directly engages with academic work on the same ideas, but Peterson has been better at popularizing and translating it in a way that's understandable, especially in our society where, I don't know, did you watch the entire Vervaeke, his 50-hour series, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis?
No.
Yeah.
And he talks about yeah, I would love to watch it, but my God,
Yeah,
it's a lot. That's a commitment.
It is. And he goes through all of human history, and frankly, I mean, this is part of Grizz's whole project, which he is right to attempt to do.
Sure.
And I wish him. I am very supportive of his project of trying to bring this stuff to a more understandable way.
Yeah.
Actually, Grizz's conversation with Vervaeke, one of the major highlights of that one was when Grizz asked Vervaeke, how do you explain this to a Kmart shopper?
Yes, that's what.
Or maybe he said Walmart shopper, something like that.
I shop at Walmart, Jacob. Occasionally, you just got to pick something up.
I do as well. I have nothing against Walmart shoppers.
Oh, I've got a lot against Walmart as a corporation. I'm focused, Jacob. I'm listening to you. Make your point. And
Vervaeke's answer was, I don't.
Okay, well, that's shitty. That's very shitty scholarship.
No. See, that's the thing. One of the worst contributions, now I'm forgetting his name, I can see his face in the physicist that everybody loves to quote, who actually said, if you can't explain it to a college sophomore, you don't understand it very well. But most people say if you can't explain it to a fifth grader or something like, or some people even say to a 5-year-old, you don't understand it very well. I think that's one of the dumbest things anybody ever said.
I think if you have a patient, you know, kindergartner or first grader, like people are smart. I think the older we get, the stupider we get in some ways. Less willing to listen.
That's I mean, it's a cute theological belief to have. And Christianity does, at least in some of its iterations, certainly in its Protestant iterations, does interpret the world that way, where everyone has a capacity to engage with everything.
Okay, well, I don't even mean that. But I mean just like as a human being, like how are we going to have a common society, a common culture if what I say simply is well beyond you? It's like not everybody has to
Hierarchy,
understand how to be.
hierarchy and trust.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean I just think not everybody has to be like a physicist themselves, but like we all
Exactly.
have to have a basic sort of.
No. One of the things Nick Freerillian has been saying lately is we really need to stop teaching so much literacy. He thinks fewer people should be able to read.
Okay.
I mean, I hear the other side of it, but that's also, I mean, one of the reasons I love Nick is he has a good way of opening volleys. So there, let me tell you a story. And
Okay, but I want to hear some of these. I want to hear more about this stuff too. But tell me the story.
okay, so I in my normal life, I'm an insurance agent, and one of the things I do is people who turn 65, I used to help them enroll in Medicare.
Sure.
And I had this nice little 65-year-old lady come to my office, and sometimes telling this story makes me tear up, so get ready.
It's okay to cry on my stream, Jacob. Crying is okay.
And she so she told she we're talking, and as I'm signing her up for Medicare, and I knew her because I was helping. She worked in a factory where I was the insurance person, right? And so she was she had come to the United States as a teenager from rural Mexico and gotten a job at this factory
Yeah.
where she had been working, and she had
For
her
40
grandson.
years then? For like over
Pretty
40
much.
years. Yeah.
Like she had definitely been working there over 30 years.
Okay. Long time.
And her grandson actually brought her to my office to help her with stuff because she was just learning to read. And she told me how much she loved to read because now that she was retired after raising her kids and working in this factory for all these years,
Yeah.
she had gotten a chance to take time for herself and to learn to read. And this always gets me.
It's huge. It makes such a huge difference.
Because I think of like my childhood reading. Like I like the idea that only at 65 did she finally have the opportunity to read. And she was not my only client who basically was functionally illiterate.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot more people than people realize who are, yeah. And she was not in any way a dumb person or anything like that.
Jacob, there's a story in my family as well where some of my relatives, grew up in very, very rural areas, didn't have access to good education, didn't, lived with maybe some dyslexia or other cognitive problems, and as older adults learn how to read, and they put that knowledge, towards reading the Bible, towards reading, very transformative sort of stuff for the first time, to be able to hear it your whole life and then to be able to read it. I've heard from my own family members, what a difference that makes. But I didn't mean to interrupt your story. I'm sorry.
No, I mean that was my point. I very much see the value of reading. However, as technology progresses, one of the possible outcomes of all of the technology that we have is that we will no longer read and write.
Jacob, if we can't read and we can't write, can we think? Do we have any shared common culture?
Well, that is part of why I started the whole just chatting thing.
Yeah.
Was I saw that these dialogues where we talk to each other are, I believe, I mean, I definitely, I used to do a lot of expository writing. There was a time I wanted to actually be, I was, when I was in undergrad, I was an opinion writer for my, for the Daily Trojan at USC. Anybody who wants can go look up the archives and read my old opinions.
Oh, wow. Link those, Jacob. Come on.
Unfortunately, it's really hard to link them. The archives aren't. They deliberately de-digitize them because they didn't want people going back and searching people's stuff. You know.
Understandable. Considering the political stakes things have today.
So when I was in college, I very much believed that the internet was forever, and it was exciting. So when I was in law school, I started some of the Wikipedia articles about basic legal terms
Okay.
because I was like, I am contributing to human knowledge,
Yeah.
right? And and so everything I put to the internet, for me, the idea that I will contribute to human knowledge in some way has actually been, it is what gives me most meaning in life. That for me is the be all and end all. Like I think, when will I have lived a good life is if I contribute something of lasting worth to humanity. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was very excited about the fact that I was creating web pages, I was writing things. I remember so I had web pages, and back then you would put counters on web pages. And in one day, one of my, so this was going viral back then. A web page I wrote had 13,000 hits.
That's a big deal, especially back
This
then.
was 1996.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. And I went and looked it up. My page on miscegenation in the Bible was the black page of the day.
Big deal.
I was so proud. Somebody I met through the internet who lived in the Deep South told me she printed that article out and took it to her pastor and made him read it.
I remember doing shit like that as a kid.
So I didn't keep records because I figured, why do I need to keep records of something that's on the internet? It'll be forever.
Yeah.
Right? And
have you Wayback Machine this, Jacob?
What?
You gotta use the Wayback Machine.
It's gone. I actually checked, and my website in 1996 was being archived, so I figured I didn't have to worry about it. Yeah. I put it out into the internet, but it's gone.
Man, you don't have a floppy disk somewhere with this stuff floating around on it? Gone. Tragedy.
I'm sure the National Security Agency or somebody has it somewhere, you know.
They probably do.
They probably do. I mean, probably USC still has archives of because it was hosted by USC.
You gotta email the right person.
Nah. If it was meant to be, it'll be. Yes, all is vanity. Havel havalem. All is vanity. So how did we get all the way to here?
I don't know.
We were talking about writing. Okay. So I'm very much like, I personally, expository writing when I discovered expository writing in freshman year of college, I felt like it was a life-changing experience.
Tell me about this life-changing experience.
So I had never actually done expository writing. So I had a class which was expository writing,
Okay.
right? Where they were teaching us how to go through the process of writing something without knowing what you wanted to write before you wrote it.
I think this is huge for telling us something about cognition we don't know and something about
Yeah.
motivation. I think this
The
is
way
really
we think, the way, right? So in to clarify my own thinking, right?
Mhm.
I learned to do expository writing.
Sure.
And this was huge to me. And I mean, there's a lot of my streams are expository dialogue. I sometimes I do go back and listen to my own streams to actually see, okay, what did I say? What did I mean? Was I right about that? Was I right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, this thinking out loud. Yeah.
yeah, that's the beauty. And I do. I talk like I talk to myself, right?
Maybe my dissertation will write itself this way. Through
Yeah,
live stream.
none of my theses ever did that. um, but actually, I found AI to be pretty good for this because what I have trouble with, I'm good at editing. I'm good at having like outlines, but just writing all the filler stuff,
Mm.
it seems like a chore to me, and I'm bad at doing my chores. And so I very much value expository writing and what the written process can do in creating and that's why I had such an appreciation for peer review. I thought,
Yeah, past tense, yes.
yeah, I thought, and this was part of, so my master's thesis, it was, so I was going to write a thesis in fulfillment of my JD and my MPA,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
and I had an idea, which, if I do say so myself, I calculated would contribute about $40 billion to the California economy over 10 years.
Okay, yeah, I think I've heard you talk about this, but I want I want to hear your story. I want to let you know I've got about maybe 5 or 10 more minutes,
Oh,
so you
so
might.
very quickly,
Yeah.
I thought if it gets published as a thesis, it'll go somewhere. And then I realized, no, this idea will never go anywhere because that's not how peer review works. And that was part of my, but when I found out, I mean, I remember reading articles in peer-reviewed law journals, right? In law journals, I thought
Yeah.
law journals would have, and they were just pure BS. And the only reason this person got to say what he did was because people agreed with them. I mean, we can get into the Supreme Court right now, but let's not
Oh
go
dear
there.
God, don't do that to me.
But
But
back to the axial revolution, I think it actually is possible that we will shift to a society where we no longer use reading and writing as our primary method of communicating and thinking, and because now we have video and we can actually talk to people and we can do the expository writing, and then we can actually communicate ideas through video, which is part of what Grizz and his Reapers and his branding do, right? Oh. So the big article could be, as opposed to an article in a peer-reviewed journal, could be like the discussion between Dawkins and Peterson, which so many people listen to, and actually get ideas from. And that is, I think, a much better way, and which is why I have my channel, why I engage in this.
Yeah, the only pushback I would give you there, not to, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think I like how, you know, a lot of pedagogy, a lot of teachers and stuff are moving towards like, oh, you can do, you know, a digital assignment or whatever. But I don't see it correcting this problem that you see of empiricism. I don't see it as being a more true form of knowledge, or you know what I
This,
mean? So,
you are so, like, now you are getting down to, this is why I talk about my project being secured distributed cognition. And secured is the part where, yeah, we're doing distributed cognition, it's not secured distributed cognition, and that is a huge problem.
okay, yeah, and then there's just some thoughts on this. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Secured distributed cognition. So what is secure? Just give me a little bit, and then I really do have to go. Secured distributed cognition.
So by secured, I mean that there is a network of trust. Actually, Yosef is working on this type of stuff with AI himself right now. That's his specialty in AI. But
Okay.
like, and actually, faith really goes into this, right? It's distributed cognition you can have faith in, and that's what faith communities do, is they provide a boundary where you can say, oh, I trust this person.
Yeah, this trust. Okay, so do we gain the trust by being part of a mutual network, or do we gain the trust by sorry, that just reminded me of PVK streaming about Luke today, and that was really something. But I want to,
That's
really,
why we call him homeroom.
Yeah. Okay, but secure distributed cognition depends on trust. Do we get this trust? How does it happen? Where does it come from?
That's difficult, but part of TLC has been over time building trust. And that's part of why when I went to Minnesota, I went out for a beer with Luke.
That's true. You're doing all of this. You've seen Sherry. We're just talking on a stream with Sherry about
I drove all over the place. I go to people's weddings. I ask them for baby pictures. I am trying to build community, and a community requires trust.
Yes. Okay. So this gets you to secure distributed cognition. Yeah. Okay. We got to bring it back. We got to bring it back to dopamine making us leave our religion, Jacob. We have to.
We could, if there was actually any neurology involved in any of the stuff you said. Unfortunately, there didn't appear to be. There appeared to be. Have you heard of the conceptual penis?
Oh dear God, Jacob, you're going to get me banned. Okay, tell me about the conceptual penis. Sorry.
So
the conceptual dick. Tell me.
No, the name of the article was conceptual penis.
Oh wait. Is this the one with the guy? Oh man, this is the bullshit sociology. That's not really so. Oh no, we're not. Don't get me all Peter Boghossian. All that bullshit. We're dumb. I'm sorry if my language offends anyone. I got carried away because I was talking to Jacob.
Did I trigger you, Clara? Did I trigger you?
Oh my goodness gracious! You're gonna get me in so much trouble, Jacob. Okay, so dopamine makes us leave our religion because our motivations for action are actually embodied, and dopamine is in our body.
I will leave you with this.
Okay.
Every single person who confuses causation with correlation dies.
Okay, we all die in the end, Jacob. Or we hope, because if you don't die, then it's just like, who knows what you're up for.
I'm telling you, every single person who confuses correlation with causation dies.
I see, because you're finding a correlation between death and confusing. Sorry. You're killing me, Jacob. You're killing me. But
empiricism is important. Science is important, and the social sciences should be scientific.
Okay, I hope that we can. Sandy says we make her laugh. We're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to redeem dopamine. I'm going to get people to see what theory articles are doing.
I would love to see this article and see if it, like the previous one, it is even worse than I imagined from your description.
Okay, to be fair, I am using the article to make an argument about religion. The authors do not make claims about religion very much. But read the article, Jacob. We'll discuss it again, I hope.
I mean, we didn't bother discussing last week's article, which, yeah, like I've offered to spend hours ripping to shreds any article you like.
Here's the problem. I need you to be a little bit charitable about what the article actually says.
Nope. That's not peer review. That's not taking a critical view and an analytical view of and testing ideas the way that we need to do in academia.
Okay, Jacob.
Too much charity. Way too much charity.
All right. Is that your final thought, or do you want to add something else?
There is one God.
Okay. All right. Jacob, thank you for joining my stream. I'm sorry I have to cut it a little bit short. Read the article. It's open access. Anybody can get a hold of it, as far as I could tell.
You should put a link in the description, or at least the citation in the description.
Okay, the citation's in the description. Maybe I should add a link. It's been really fun talking to you. I hope we talk again. Okay. Bye.